Abraham Lincoln said, "You can fool all the people some of the time, and some of the people all of the time, but you cannot fool all the people all the time." Hello again, my name is MD, and this is the Fourth Branch Project. Today we continue with a serious trade war with China. A situation that has begun since the beginning of the Trump administration. On and off, depend on the mood of the individual in the Oval Office. The questions everybody keep asking is, or are, who stand to benefit in the trade war with China? And what are the consequences? Who will be the casualties of the war? We began this series yesterday where we provided you with an introduction as to the trade war with China. Today we continue with the series and providing you some background in terms of where are we heading with the trade war with China? Is it something that's good for the United States? Or is it just the continuation of Donald Trump's ways of trying to bullying people? If you recall, during in his private life, most of the time, if it's not all of the time, he uses a tactic that forces his opponent to either give up or give in. And he carries that quote-unquote strategy into the Oval Office. And thus far, he has alienated most of our allies, has pretty much push everybody else on the side and try to cozy up to dictators like Kim Jong-un or Vladimir Putin. China, which is an obvious trade partner for the United States, has always been a subject of a lot of conversation, a lot of diplomacy, but never before had any president gone as far as declaring a trade war with China. Will it succeed? Will Donald Trump win that war? Who will blame? Up to this point, this is the third round of putting tariff on Chinese goods, and in retaliation, China does the same thing. Will it ever stop? Who will blame? Don't go anywhere. After a short commercial break, we will come back to continue the conversation on trade war with China.
I'm telling you, Michael Jordan himself was right here in my McDonald's. I fixed him the very first McJordan special.
Right, Bill.
I did. I took a quarter pound of pure beef, smoked bacon, cheese, and some of my favorite barbecue sauce, and I named it the McJordan Special.
Bill, the sandwich, definitely great.
Yeah, but you got the cooling with that story.
But it's true.
How you doing, Bill?
Hi, Michael. Michael.
The McJordan Special for a limited time.
The United States of America is in a serious crisis. The biggest problem, the crisis that the country is going through now, is to have a network that's called itself news, but that says nothing about news. That's only telling lies, create controversies, and at the same time educating millions of people to stay or become ignorant. There is nothing that is said by Sean Hannity, there is nothing that is said at Fox that is true. So when I say the country is in a crisis, this is not an exaggeration. Donald Trump is wrong to call the media the enemy of the country. Adolf Hitler did exactly the same thing in 1933. Journalists are not in the business of fairness. Our business, our only business, is to be objective. It is our duty to hold Trump and every administration accountable. Today, it is urgent, it is necessary, it is critical. Our very freedom depends on it.
Wayfair, you got just what I need. Everything from my home, you got it for me. I never see selection quite like this. Every color and size in my mind. They got every single thing on my list. And with 70% off, who knows what I'll find. Wayfair, you got just what I need. Everything from my home, you got it for me. Wayfair, and the shipping was free. Now my home's the home I want.
From all of us at Wayfair, find what you need today.
I'm telling you, Michael Jordan himself was right here in my McDonald's. I fixed him the very first McJordan special.
Right, Bill.
I did. I took a quarter-pound of pure beef, smoked bacon, cheese, and some of my favorite barbecue sauce, and I named it the McJordan Special.
Bill, the sandwich, definitely great.
Yeah, but you got the cooling with that story.
But it's true.
How you doing, Bill?
Hi, Michael. Michael.
The McJordan Special for a limited time.
This is a trade war. Hello, I am MD, and this is the Fourth Branch Project. Trade war is a term that has been in existence for a very long time. As a matter of fact, since there has been commerce between different countries and different parts of the world. But 2 years ago, the world has taken a very different turn. Donald Trump ran for the presidency of the United States, and as one of the most talked about topic that he brought to the conversation was that he is going to have a trade war with China. He has accused China of taking advantage of the United States, and he has cited the trade deficit between China and the United States. In fact, this is one of his hallmark that once he becomes president, he will fix everything. He will go to war with China, he will make China pay, and he will make certain that he level the playing field. Now, that was the candidate for president. Now, once Donald Trump became president, the situation has changed a little bit back and forth. He didn't talk much about it because he had something else in mind. If you recall, at some point, he was lobbying the idea of having a relationship with Kim Jong-un, or at the very least of trying to get North Korea from pursuing their ambition, which is to nuclearize the North Korea. Now, in a bid to try to denuclearize North Korea, Donald Trump has had a number of partners in the region, especially China, because as the United States government knows, China is the country that North Korea relies very heavily on in order to not only for subsistence, but also in order to have enough to continue their ambition of nuclear power. Now, during that period of time that had priority for Donald Trump, China was a much needed ally that he had to rely very heavily on in order to get to that point. Obviously, that was extremely important to the Trump administration. But in the game of diplomacy, there is always a give and take, and there is always the knowledge of the individual or the country you're dealing with. Unfortunately, however, Donald Trump brought to the table an experience which cannot be transferred to a president. That experience cannot be used when you're sitting across the table from another head of state, especially if that other head of state has as much muscle as you do. So Donald Trump, obviously, having been in the private sector where he pushed people around, where he threatened people, and he take people to court and use his financial power, and of course having an army of lawyers, usually it would turn out to be successful. But unfortunately, in the game of diplomacy, it doesn't work too well. So Donald Trump found out very quickly that he cannot just use an individual, in that case a head of state, and get rid of that head of state once he thinks that he is heading in the right direction or things are going to work out for him, and just push that individual to the side without pursuing whatever he has in mind. In fact, if you recall, the Prime Minister of Japan made two trips, actually a little bit more than that, to the United States when there was talk that Kim Jong-un was open to the idea of sitting down with the President of the United States in order to talk denuclearization. Now, once that worked out, if you if you were following this whole evolution of that aspect of the negotiation between the Trump administration and Kim Jong-un in North Korea, right before the meeting in Singapore, the Prime Minister of Japan, Abe, came to the United States in order to make certain that during the time that Donald Trump will be sitting down with Kim Jong-un, he would remember that Japan has a stake on that negotiation, so that Donald Trump doesn't just negotiate just for America and let the allies in the region just with an empty bag. Well, it turns out that as Donald Trump was doing all that, negotiation was being done, preparation were being done in order for the President of the United States to meet with Kim Jong-un in Singapore. It so happened that China was completely sidetracked. So there was no more conversation with China, because at that time Donald Trump figured out that China was no longer needed, because now that he has established that communication with North Korea, and the meeting would, per his calculation, gonna produce some fruit without China. So quote unquote, the hell with China. And that's where diplomacy makes a great deal of sense. Now, what ended up happening when China get wind of that development, of course, China being a closest ally to North Korea than the United States can ever be, not only because of proximity, but also because of the fact that North Korea relies pretty much fully on China for its existence, whether it's financially or even for protection. North Korea kind of, China could be considered as the umbrella of North Korea. So it goes without saying that North Korea must have alerted China that negotiation for Kim Jong-un to meet with Donald Trump in Singapore was going forward. So China did what China is very good at. China acted diplomatically. By acting diplomatically, that means that China most likely coached Kim Jong-un as far as talking, negotiating with the President of the United States, because China has been on the block for quite some time now. Now, obviously, the meeting took place. Both leaders went to Singapore. Handshake were exchanged. Pictures were taken. Video. There were really the fanfare of the President of the United States meeting with Kim Jong-un were top of the news everywhere around the world. Now, I must admit that no matter what anyone think of Donald Trump, or no matter what anyone think of Kim Jong-un, if indeed that meeting in Singapore could bring some kind of peace to the region, could help make North Korea a much better neighbor for for China, for Japan, for the other close neighbors in that region of the world. So there is nothing wrong with that. But as I mentioned at the top of this conversation, it's impossible in the world of diplomacy to simply push everybody on the side and try to do everything on your own, when in fact the very reason that this type of progress could be made is because the people in that region lent their help to get to the point of having the President of the United States sitting down with Kim Jong-un in order to work out a deal, hopefully, so that there could be some sort of agreement in terms of whether it's complete denuclearization, or if there could be some sort of understanding that from that point on that North Korea would get along with its neighbors, then that would be great progress, and there is absolutely nothing wrong with that. However, in the process, if you also recall that the Prime Minister of Japan was completely left out of the loop, because first the meeting to the negotiation to meet with Kim Jong-un was previously postponed because by Donald Trump, because Donald Trump at least people were advising Donald Trump, suspected that Kim Jong-un may not keep his word, and the president of the United States would be humiliated by proceeding with the meeting. So in order to prevent that from happening, so Donald Trump called off the meeting. And there is nothing wrong with that either, but there were a number of people involved in the negotiation, or at least who had an interest in that particular meeting, especially the Prime Minister of Japan, who took a trip to the United States to talk to Donald Trump specifically about that very evolution of things. And here was the Prime Minister of Japan learning that Donald Trump had canceled the meeting with from a TV station. So diplomacy, Donald Trump doesn't have that, and that reflects even in the way that he deals with allies, in the way that he deals with partners. So after the meeting was canceled the first time, of course, things got back on track and the meeting was rescheduled, and Donald Trump met with Kim Jong-un in Singapore. But in that summit, of course, document was signed. According to report, just a one-page document was signed that where Kim Jong-un proposed to denuclearize North Korea. So Donald Trump came out of the meeting and boasted about how he could manage to get an agreement from North Korea, and now the whole world is safe because North Korea is going to denuclearize. Now, we all know that Donald Trump brags about everything, and what makes it even more interesting is the fact that maybe, just maybe, he believes what he was saying, that North Korea was going to denuclearize. Now, everybody else besides Donald Trump didn't buy that. Everybody else was very suspicious, and everybody else simply was waiting to see what kind of progress was going to be made after that meeting in Singapore. Needless to point out that not much was being done, but in the process that Donald Trump was talking up the fact that Kim Jong-un gave him his word and he was going to work toward denuclearization, behind the scene, although I'm sure a number of diplomats may have suspected that, but behind the scene, China must have warned Kim Jong-un that the process, the whole denuclearization of North Korea would not be to his advantage. I'm not sure that Kim Jong-un needed that kind of advice from China, because there was never any intention from Kim Jong-un to denuclearize North Korea to begin with. Nevertheless, here in the United States, Donald Trump was still talking up the whole aspect of thing, and at some point there was even a letter that was sent by Donald Trump via the Secretary of State Mike Pompeo to go to North Korea and meet with Kim Jong-un, and at the same time deliver a CD that had that has the song, the Rocket Man song. I guess maybe a way to warm up to the dictator of North Korea, since before that meeting in Singapore, Donald Trump used to have to call Kim Jong-un Rocket Man. Now, Mike Pompeo went to North Korea, and although in his mind he was going to meet with Kim Jong-un, but when he got there he found out that that was not going to happen. So he went to North Korea. Of course, he still delivered the CD, but he didn't meet with Kim Jong-un. That was already a sign that nothing was going to happen. Now, the reason I said all that is because in that part of the world, China pretty much owns that area. That region belongs to China. China is a power in the region. So if any country wants to have any kind of influence, or wants to do any kind of job, or wants to do anything in the region, it is almost impossible to succeed without having China on board. And the mistake that, of course, Donald Trump made was, once he felt that the negotiation with North Korea was going to move forward, he completely sidestepped China and move on to get the United States sit down with North Korea and work out there without the need for China. But as he would find out pretty quickly, that would not bring any result or any successful outcome. Now, although one can easily conclude that China may have had some impact on the decision of North Korea not to denuclearize, or whatever advice that North Korea may have received from China, again, as I mentioned, may have been useless, because not that anybody expected Kim Jong-un to simply give up their ambition to pursue nuclear power, because the calculus from Kim Jong-un, or at least the people who advise him, the only reason that US decided or agreed to sit with Kim Jong-un was because of their nuclear weapon. So to give up the nuclear weapon would be almost a shocking matter to the whole world, that Kim Jong-un would do something like that. And besides, if you recall, during the time that there were this back and forth threat between Donald Trump and Kim Jong-un, there was even mention in North Korea that those people, those head of state who had given up their leverage, end up dead. For instance, the gentleman in Libya, Gaddafi, went and get rid of all his weapons, and after that he was kicked out of power and eventually got killed by his enemy. And Saddam Hussein, who at some time ago was his regime was pursuing some sort of nuclear weapon, but gave up that idea a long time ago, and he too suffers some consequences of the action. Of course, North Korea is well aware of that. So there was nobody besides Donald Trump who probably believed that North Korea was going to denuclearize. That aside, when Donald Trump suspected that China may have lend support somehow, whether advising North Korea or at least represent some sort of stumbling block in terms of any progress being made with North Korea, then Donald Trump restarted the war with China, the trade war, that is. Now, the trade war with China obviously is not anything new, because since Donald Trump was running for during the primaries, Donald Trump used that leverage quite a lot to rally people behind him, because he mentioned to every single constituent who was affected by jobs that were displaced because of evolution, because of technology. Donald Trump was saying to them in very simplistic terms that when I become president, all that is going to change, because all the jobs that are going out of the door, that are going to China, that are going to other places in the world, once he becomes president, he will make sure that the job comes back, and he will fix the trade deficit between the United States and China. Of course, he talks about other allies as well, but his primary focus was on fixing the trade deficit between the United States and China. Now, needless to rehash the fact that the constituent believed everything that Donald Trump said, even if the logic wasn't there, but the language was so simplistic that they could easily take it at face value without having to really answer to anything at all. So Donald Trump managed to convince enough constituents that his way will work, meaning having a war with China will definitely work. Will it? Well, in order for this to become really something that we can say with a high level of certainty that that it would work, we need to take a quick look at what a trade deficit is, because while it sounds ominous that when you say deficit, now in the mind, a deficit is something that's bad. That means you are losing, the other side is winning. That's pretty much what it sounds like. But unfortunately, a number of individuals may not necessarily have the resources to kind of get a good grasp of when we're talking about deficit, especially trade deficit. What does it mean exactly? What does it entail? And does it hurt? Well, the term does sound that it does hurt. And Donald Trump, as candidate for president, promised to the country that as president, he's going to fix that problem. The trade deficit between China and the United States, he will take care of that. And of course, the trade deficit with any other group or ally, he will fix that as well. So let's take a look at what exactly is a trade deficit in order to get a sense as to what are we looking at, and as to how much that trade war with China and other allies may be or may not be good for the United States. I'll be right back.
Boogum now, baby, you're casting your spell on me. I say boogum now, baby, you're casting your spell on me. My baby's got the spells on me.
again. This is, or that was, episode 1 of the trade war with China. Let me also remind you that at 2 p.m. we have a special program in regards to Brett Kavanaugh, the story that's been in the news for the past few days. And we will take a quick look at the details of the situation, and we will also provide a certain level of understanding for those who are interested in making their own decision about whether pursuing that justice to the Supreme Court or dropping him altogether is a good thing, because it is a crucial, it is a critical, it is a very important aspect of history being evolved right under our eyes. Mr. Brett Kavanaugh is a very young individual slated to become the next justice, and what that means for the next 30 plus years, Mr. Kavanaugh will be shaping the nation for good or for bad. And at this point, our focus should not be on whether it should go through because he's being nominated by a Republican president or by Republican legislators in Washington, but rather everything that we're looking at this point should be looked through the prism of the future generation. So I invite you at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. We will be looking at Brett Kavanaugh as the next justice or not. Thank you for watching. I hope you have a good afternoon until 2 p.m.
I'm telling you, Michael Jordan himself was right here in my McDonald's. I fixed him the very first McJordan special.
Right, Bill.
I did. I took a quarter pound of pure beef, smoked bacon, cheese, and some of my favorite barbecue sauce, and I named it the McJordan Special.
Bill, the sandwich, definitely great.
Yeah, but you got the cooling with that story.
But it's true.
How you doing, Bill?
Hi, Michael. Michael.
The McJordan Special.